Proud to host the International Conference on Population and Development from the 12th to the 14th November 2019 at the KICC Nairobi, Kenya.
I march for the empowerment of girls and women.
To have access to quality self-reproductive health.
For the quality of life every girl and woman deserve.
No girl or woman should ever have to fight for something that is her human rights.
I march for making sure that all girls and women are empowered to take action and make decisions about their lives.
And make the same choices that I'm able to make.
I march so that every Kenyan can have access to quality, affordable healthcare. No Kenyan woman should die while giving birth. I am convinced, and in line with government commitment, that it's possible to make UHC in Kenya a reality.
I march to reaffirm our commitment to deliver on the commitment of ICPD 25. I march to empower young people to make decisions on matters that are important to their lives.
I march for a world which protects and invests in the rights of young people to access their fullest sexual, reproductive and health rights over the next 130 months between now and 2030.
I march for young people's rights to be heard and be leaders in the communities and countries.
We march for the youth to lead happy, healthy and productive lives.
I march for the right to choose whether you have children and with whom you have children.
I march for every young girl that has lost their life because of procuring unsafe abortion due to the restrictive policy and legal framework in my country.
I march for the rights for every woman and girl to truly decide about her body, her life, her future.
Because she decides.
I march for all the women and girls who can't.
I march for sexual and reproductive health rights.
Every young person to have access to comprehensive sexual education to enable young people to protect their health, well-being and dignity.
I'm marching to Nairobi so that all adolescents in Africa have independent, and universal access to sexual and reproductive health and rights.
Because it's a human right and they deserve access.
I march for the thousands and thousands of girls and women with disabilities who have for long been excluded in sexual and reproductive health.
So that they're not embarrassed or shy to talk about their bodies, about sex, to their partners when the time comes for them.
I march for the access of quality, youth-friendly, sexual and reproductive health services and comprehensive sexuality education.
Young people, they are catered for their rights.
To enjoy my sexual reproductive health and to realise a world where LGBT rights are respected and protected.
I march for a world in which all young girls reach their full potential.
I march for a world where everyone has an equal voice.
I march for women empowerment.
I march for gender equality. This is why I march.
I march for all adolescents to get the support they need to live healthy, happy, and productive lives. I march for young people's rights to be heard and be leaders in the communities and countries. This is why I march.
I march for freedoms, the freedoms that every woman and girl must experience to achieve their full potential in society, including the freedom to make sexual and reproductive health decisions of their own. This is why I march.
I march for women and girls. I march for gender equality. I march for women's right to choose. This is why I march.
I march for all the girls and women around the world who don't get to have the same freedoms that I do and that don't get to make the same choices that I can make. No woman should ever have to fight for something that is her human rights. This is why I march.
I march for the 68 million girls at risk of female genital mutilation. If we don't stand by them, they are alone. We need to recognize what they're going through, and this is why I march.
I march for my mum, I march for my sister, I march for human rights. I march for sexual reproductive health and the right to choose. I march for my right to enjoy my sexual reproductive health and to realise a world where LGBT rights are respected and protected. This is why I march.
I march for the survivors of sexual abuse, especially because of the shame and stigmatization attached to them. I believe that it's important for everyone to know that it's never their fault. This is why I march.
I march for that village woman who is having a third or fourth pregnancy, that she does not die bringing that life to the world. This is why I march.
I march for the reproductive rights of all women with disabilities. I want you to know that you have the right to sexual reproductive health, the right to information and communication, and the right to motherhood and child rearing. This is why I march.
I march for the right of women and girls to decide about their own bodies. Only they should decide who to love, when to love, whom to marry if at all, whether to have children, how many. This is why I march.
Let us remember today the 830 women who will die is why I march.
My name is Mette Knudsen. I'm the ambassador of Denmark to Kenya. I march for zero maternal death.
My name is Erin Bergtirongli. I'm the Norwegian ambassador to Kenya. I march to eliminate and forced marriage. That's why I march.
I'm the Finnish ambassador to Kenya, and I march for zero gender-based violence. That's what I march for.
My name is Anna Jardfelt. I'm the Swedish ambassador to Kenya. I march against sexual gender-based violence.
I march for gender parity. The main obstacle to gender equality is a question of power in a male-dominated world with a male-dominated culture. So we need to have as many women as men in all positions of responsibility in our governments, in our societies, in our organizations.
I march for women and girls' rights, their sexual and reproductive health and rights, their right to make their own choices, the right to decide about their own body, their own life, their future, their families. This is why I march.
This is Freya from Denmark. I march to build a peaceful and inclusive society where all people feel valued and able to shape their destiny.
I'm Tale from Uganda. I march to intensify efforts for full, effective and accelerated implementation of funding for ICPD Program of Action.
I march to provide timely data, health innovation and improvement to your data systems.
This is Nasiran from Kenya. I march for zero unmet needs for family planning information and services and availability of modern contraceptives.
I march for zero sexual and gender-based violence in order to realize individuals' potentials.
I'm Samara from Ethiopia. I march for adolescents and youth to get information and services to make informed choices for their sexuality and productive lives.
This is Chinedu from Ghana. I march for humanitarian needs of populations as critical response to humanitarian and environmental crises.
I'm Angela from Rwanda. I march for national budget, domestic financing, and exploring new innovative financing to implement ICPD program.
I'm Tracy from Eritrea. I march to increase the percentage of official development aid to ensure universal access to SRHR.
I'm Diana from South Africa. I march for investing in adolescents and youth education, employment opportunities, and health.
I march.
I march.
I march. I march. I march.
I march.
I march. I march. I march.
Push me past the breaking point. I stood for nothing, so I fell for everything. You held me down, but I got up, already brushing off the dust. You hear my voice, you hear that sound, like thunder gon' shake you. Held me down, but I got up. Get ready, 'cause I had enough. See it all, see it now. I got the eye of the tiger of fire, dancing through the fire, 'cause I am a champion, and you're gonna hear me roar. La la
have seen our faces. You have heard our voices. This ICPD must address girls' needs. Down.
Magic so colorful, bold, exciting. You want more. Destination so rich and exceptionally memorable experience. You're bound to find your own brand of magic and more. Be it from our amazing ocean, lakes, rivers, and the possibilities they deliver, or the enriching encounters with our highly spirited people who embody our diverse cultures and heritage and bring to life our cities that never sleep. There's more magic than you could ever imagine, and it doesn't stop there. Discover your magic in our vast and exhilarating magical safaris that are simply second to none. And not to forget our eco-tourism that is well integrated with our culture. We said, Kenya has it all and more. So here's to embracing the new, vibrant, magical Kenya and discovering the best that the country has to offer. Don't be left out.
Proud to host the International Conference on Population and Development Summit from the 12th to the 14th November 2019 at the KICC Nairobi, Kenya.
All right, please begin to take your seats. We'll get started very shortly. My name is Michelle Goodwin, and I want to welcome you to our plenary. Please take your seats. And I'm going to ask for your silence. Thank you so very much. As I mentioned, my name is Michelle Goodwin. I'm a professor of law at the University of California, Irvine, and I'm also an executive committee member of the American Civil Liberties Union. It is a pleasure to be with you this morning, and I'll ask that you please take your seats and that you do so in silence. We have a wonderful plenary for you this morning, urgent than they are today. Good morning. Can you hear me? And can you say good morning back? Good morning. One more time. Good morning. All right. Because we need your participation, because this is an outstanding panel, and we need to give them your full attention. So, what does it take to survive extreme violence? What does it take to end it? We have incredible, courageous individuals with us this morning who've had to live through that. But many of you in this audience also know people who've had to endure violence. Perhaps you have yourselves. You have mothers, aunts, sisters, and perhaps even brothers who've had to endure violence. What is sad is that it's 2019, and we are still debating these questions. Today, this panel will have an intimate discussion with you. It's not just talking heads, but really an intimate thought process as to what we need to do to stamp out gender-based violence. Now, without further ado, because we have a lot to cover in very limited time, I want to call up to the stage the Minister, Her Excellency, Professor Margaret Kobia. She is the Cabinet Secretary for Public Service and Youth Affairs here in Kenya. Can you give her a warm welcome of applause?
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. It is a great pleasure and an honor for me to address the Nairobi Summit on the International Conference on Population ICTPD plus 0.5, whose theme is Accelerating the Promise. I welcome you all to this plenary, whose focus is prevalence and the partnership key to ending gender-based violence. We appreciate the opportunity and the privilege to hold this historic event. Kenya is committed to advancing ideals of strategic action that advance human progress in the broad context of human dignity and well-being. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we recognize substantial progress has been made since ICPD in Cairo. Women have more opportunities and access to education, healthcare, and economy than they did 25 years ago. However, gender-based violence challenge hinders women from enjoying equal status. Globally, it is estimated that 35% of the women worldwide have experienced either physical or sexual violence. However, some national studies show that up to 70% of women have experienced physical, sexual violence in their lifetime from an intimate partner. More than 700 million women alive today were married as children, that is below the age of 18. Of these women, more than 1 in 3 were married before they were 15 years of age. Adult women account to almost a half of all human trafficking victims detected globally. Women and girls account for about 70%, with girls representing 2 out of every 3 child trafficking victims. At least 200 million women and girls alive today have undergone female genital mutilation in 30 countries. 1 in 10 women in the European Union report having experienced cyber harassment since the age of 15, including having received unwanted, offensive, sexually explicit emails or SMS messages, or offensive, inappropriate advances of social networking sites. These statistics should worry us and should serve as a wake-up call. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, 25 years after Cairo, we have converged in Nairobi to review our progress. Specifically, for this plenary, the key question for us today is, what have we done to end gender-based violence? I am cognizant that most countries represented here today have developed progressive legal and a policy framework to end gender-based violence. However, challenges remain in the implementation, and that's why we must engage in partnership to actualize the various international and national frameworks that we have to end gender-based violence. Importantly, normalizing of gender-based violence is a key area of concern and indicates a flawed socialization process that reinforces a general culture of silence, condemnation of victims and survivors, and a feeling of shame and unworthiness, both on the part of victims and close family members. The voices of the victims of gender-based violence have been stifled by ancient, distorted codes of honor and shame, as well as by structural gender-based inequality and exclusion. These harmful norms have exacerbated to the manner in which we as duty bearers have been responding to gender-based violence. This conference is timely because it's about holding duty bearers accountable. In most cases, survivors of gender-based violence have found themselves alone and desperate. This is especially so where rape has been used as tactic of war, terror, and torture, intimidation to send a signal to the victims and the entire community that nothing is sacred and nowhere is safe. This conference must seek answers on why, despite having progressive international and national framework that clearly spells out issues on human rights and gender-based violence, continue to be a serious hindrance to achievement of gender equality. Since Cairo, Excellencies, ICPD of 1994, Kenya has enacted a number of laws that focus on eradication of gender-based violence and harmful practices. Some of these laws and instruments include Sexual Offences Act of 2006, the Counter-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2011, the Children's Act of 2001, Prevention Against Violence Act 2015, and the Eradication of FGM Act 2011. The government of Kenya has adopted a multifaceted approach to eradicate gender-based violence, and we are committed to addressing the root causes of gender inequality through strengthening of legal framework, formulation of relevant policies, and implementation of efficacious program. We continue to build strategic partnership with the United Nations, development partners, civil society organizations, research institutions, academia, and the private sector, and other stakeholders that will ensure that we achieve zero gender-based violence by the year 2030, as spelled out in Sustainable Development Goals. We must promote a culture of equality and equity between men and women through institutional and legal reforms, education, awareness, raising a full engagement of men and boys. In conclusion, Your Excellencies, I wish to emphasize that although much progress has been made in addressing gender-based violence, there is still a lot of work to be done. Let me reiterate that the Nairobi Summit commitment on gender-based violence is to address the vice and all other harmful practices, in particular child and early forced marriages and the female genital mutilation, by committing to strive for 1, zero sexual and gender-based violence and the harmful practices, including zero child early marriages, as well as zero FGM. 2, elimination of all forms of discrimination against girls in order to realize all individuals' full socioeconomic potential. As we engage this plenary, I want to challenge all of us to discuss and share strategies that are geared towards our commitment to getting zero-based, gender-based violence. We must ask ourselves, what is this that is going to break new grounds moving forward? I thank you for your kind attention.
I'd like to call Nadine to the stage. She is the president of the National Women's Institute. She is a highly educated woman. She has a PhD in public health, an MD as well. Her work has extended to the field, to policy, and so much more. And without further ado, please join us.
Thank you very much. I guess these days I would like to be introduced as a highly educated feminist, so it will get clear where I come from. So good morning, everybody, colleagues and friends, and thank you very much to everyone for attending this such an important and exciting panel. We have an incredible group of panelists. I want to thank UNFPA for this initiative and for allowing me to contribute with some initial thoughts that will lead to a bigger conversation on the expression of inequality, subordination, and of power relations such as gender-based violence. This space will allow us not only to share good practices of world leaders who have assumed the elimination of gender-based violence as a personal commitment, but also to talk about new ways of understanding this problem, and especially new ways to end it before 2030 in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm really very happy UNFPA has set as one of its zeros to zero gender-based violence. I think it's a commitment of the UN, but it's a commitment of humanity. I will briefly reflect with you about the origins and the factors that produce and reproduce gender-based violence, to later address some of the main challenges we encounter when attempting to eradicate it. Looking back in history, the oppression of minorities, of women, is the oldest violation of human rights. This demands, cries for the question, what has perpetuated this outrage? How has it managed to consolidate? And what enables it to persist in modern democratic societies? Gender-based violence has its roots in the fundamentally patriarchal structure of society. Its basis is therefore structural and ideological. Masculinity has been associated with power, control, courage, mastery of reason, possession of knowledge, government of public and individual independence. What is actually imposed by force goes on the views as, so said, natural. This normality, also called hegemonic truth, belongs to those who endorse the laws and values of patriarchy without discussion. It is a dogma imposed on society individually and collectively. The system is then translated into misogynistic and discriminatory postures, starting with the often religious ideologies. And although we have given ourselves systems of government capable of constructing agreements and of recognizing rights and freedoms, and we have generated the ability to sign international conventions that claim equality between women and men and condemn gender-based violence, this clearly has not been enough. We must not forget that gender-based violence adopts various forms and is expressed in different ways, which go from the most obvious to the most subtle ones, from harassment, forced marriage, child pregnancy, to rape and femicide. Every single one affects our rights, our lives, our personal and collective rights. The data is meaningful. Globally, according to UNICEF, 650 million women got married before turning 18, and approximately 15 million women between ages 15 and 19 have suffered rape at some point of their lives. 15 million. It's a population of many countries. Taking about the most extreme manifestation of violence against women, feminicide, the global rate is over 2 for each 100,000 women, being Africa and Latin America the most dangerous regions for women. In my country, in Mexico, every day, 10 women are assassinated because they're women. It is unacceptable and it has to stop. When it comes to sexual minorities, to this day, 70 UN member states still penalize consensual sexual relations between same-sex adults, and 6 countries impose death penalty to this community. This is why we cannot approach violence with simple answers and solutions. We can't wait for others to solve the problems. We need to address violence now. But most importantly, there is no better ally to violence than apathy and indifference. This is a cultural problem we need to put a special effort on attending. We need to be serious about zero tolerance towards violence. I also want to talk about our challenges, as I said in the beginning, because even with the evidence advances in the international agenda, eliminating gender violence still faces many obstacles that we need to understand and identify to be able to address them. We must be aware of the crisis of democracy the crisis that democracy has been facing in the past years, because these social and political conditions can and have negative impact on the safety of girls and women. These conflicts need to be solved with dialogue and inclusion to protect women, girls, and sexual minorities. We know that violent contexts favor the increase in human rights violation and gender-based violence. Democracy, as we know, are the best system to prevent and solve conflicts. In democracy, differences have voices and have a place. It promotes mediation and ensures government reaction to social problems. However, we must also be alert that we have to make sure that the resolution of conflicts does not turn into the use of militarization speeches which jeopardize human rights and violence, especially in the case of women and other minority and women human rights defenders. The struggle of the feminist agenda lays in the principle of democracy. It is there where the recognition of our basic principle and the necessity of plurality decides. But now, it is in democracy that the plurality of rights that were believed to be conquered are now at risk. The coexistence of diversity and difference has enriched society, but some political agendas are against it. We are witnessing worldwide the return of hate speeches with extremist ideologies that dislike the progress of achievements and conquests for gender and minorities. This is a real threat. A threat to the advances we have made. A counterpunch from conservative forces seek to silence injustices which were previously recognized widely. This rejection of differences opens the door to justify violence, racism, and discrimination actions. It is urgent to ask, how is this possible? Why do we return to discussions that seem to be resolved? And what consequences can it have for the advances that have been achieved with so much sacrifice? Disarticulating the causes of the different expressions of violence would only be possible if we dismantle the daily habits that produce inequalities in the first place. Answers are not easy to